update on the Menendez Brothers case. So the LA County District Attorney has just announced that he is recommending a resentencing for the brothers and is going to court tomorrow to make his plea before a judge. So here's what he wants to do. He wants to change their sentence to 50 years to life. Remember, right now, they are serving a sentence, a life sentence without any possibility of parole. They were sentenced in 1996 for the murders of their parents, Kitty and Jose Menendez. The killings took place in 1989. There have been 2 trials in this case. So this is huge. Going to court tomorrow to ask a judge to resentence them. And because they were both under the age of 26 at the time, technically, under the law, if they're resentenced, it means they can be released immediately. And that is exactly what the DA wants to have happen. However, this is not a done deal because tomorrow at this court hearing, a lot of assistant district attorneys are expected to attend in opposition of the release of the Menendez brothers. So this is not over, but it is a huge, huge step. It's been interesting, you know, the district attorney said that there has just been, his office has been flooded by calls for information and people making their comments and their wishes known about this case. As you know, we've had a high-profile documentary, a docu-series. Kim Kardashian has penned an essay in support of the Menendez brothers being released, and a huge movement on TikTok. And that's really the most interesting part of this entire conversation, because I always say, when we ask the question, what would justice look like, that it's a conversation that takes place between the survivors family members, the victims of the family of the victims, and also the community. And in this case, the Menendez family, almost all of them, but not all, but most of the Menendez family has used something called Marsy's Law to basically, as the family members of the victims, to say, this is what we want and this is what we think is justice. And they are asking for the release of Lyle and Erik Menendez. So that's huge. So many things are going on right now, but no one's getting released immediately right now. However, the possibility is there, especially with going to court tomorrow. We want to hear what you have to say. What do you think? So many of you have been so vocal about this case, and I think you all have contributed to getting to this point right now, because you have not remained silent. You have said, you know, what happened 30 years ago and what happened today, no one believed that they were being sexually abused. And how we look at cases like this has changed dramatically in 3 decades. However, I once had a police captain say to me, if every child who had ever been abused killed their parents, we'd have a lot of dead parents. So it's also important that the DA said he has not lost sight of the fact that 2 people were brutally murdered. And, you know, no one is suggesting that they get off. The question is, have they paid the price enough? And the DA said that he felt he saw in this case rehabilitation, and he thinks that's part of the justice system. So he feels they've been model inmates getting college degrees and other advanced degrees, and so he feels they're ready to be released, and he does not feel that they will be a threat to the public. Do we have some questions? Because I'd love to answer your questions if I can from YouTube. Forgive me, I gotta read your questions. Okay, so you believe that you think that they should stay in prison. Okay, understandable. Yes, Kim Kardashian has written an essay, which was published, in support of their release, and she pointed directly to the fact that she felt that they were sexually abused, that was not taken into consideration in the second trial, because in the second trial, what was interesting about it, the first trial was a hung jury, and in that trial they brought in the allegations of sexual abuse. In the second trial, the judge and the DA were so tough on the defense that they were really limited in what they could say about the sexual abuse. And that led to the conviction because it was so limited. And I do want to point out one thing that's talked about. Can you help me find another question? Sorry, because I want to update you on everything. So remember, there's been a lot of talk about this letter that had been written. And this is really important. So this was the letter that was found recently. When Erik was 13 years old, he wrote to his cousin, Andy Cano. Now, Andy testified in the first trial, but he died, I believe it, when he was about 30 years old. So he's no longer available to testify. But what's so interesting is that his mom, their aunt, found this letter written from Erik to Andy, the cousin. And why is this important? This was months before the murders. And so the prosecution had always said, where's the evidence? Where is the evidence that they had been sexually abused? You're just saying it. Where is it documented? And this letter predates the murder. It is written making all these references to how the boys feel. And so this was not available before. This is part of the new evidence. So in this letter, this is from the court record. I have been trying to avoid Dad. It is still happening. Andy, it's getting worse for me now. I can't explain it. And it goes on and it gets a little detailed, so I'm not going to share that with you. Oh, here, let me see if I can answer some more questions for you. Okay, what does it mean that they were under 26? Do they get a lesser sentence? Okay, this is how the district attorney explained it. He said that under sentencing guidelines, that if you're under the age of 26 at the time that the crimes are committed, that you would, in this 50 to life sentencing parameter, be eligible for parole. It's called like it's got a specific name, and it's here somewhere in my notes. It's very specific about what it's called. So that, I think, is key. Also, you know, we were talking about the possibility that maybe the DA would say this could have been manslaughter, but he didn't change that charge. He actually left the charge at murder. So it's the big change as far as what the DA is recommending is he's changing the sentencing to make them eligible for parole. So here's what could happen. Could go before the judge tomorrow. There will be some opposition. There will be some assistant DAs who actually work this case, who feel very strongly that they should not be released. Let's say the judge says, okay, I'm agreeing to the resentencing. Then the judge could make the decision to release them or kick it to the parole board. And then the parole board of California would sit, look at the evidence, get the feedback, look at their record as inmates, and then make a decision. So two things could happen there. Do the brothers have any money left? That is so interesting. I don't know the answer to that. That is a great question. I love your questions. Do you think that they will be released immediately? Whew. I don't know that they will be released tomorrow. If I had to guess here, I think that they could be out by Thanksgiving. I think that's what could happen. And then some people have been asking a question about, okay, so what do the Menendez brothers do when they get out? I don't know, but my hope is this, based on their own words, if you all watch the documentary, that hopefully they will do some good with the opportunity. If they're given an opportunity and a second chance to live their lives, the rest of their lives as free men, I hope that they choose to do good with that and hopefully help others and maybe work toward supporting survivors of sexual abuse. I just think that there's a lot of good they could do if they get let out and get that opportunity. And look, I don't know whether they should be let out, right? I don't know. I'm just giving you all the possibilities here. Okay, we have another question here. Here's the question. They talked a lot about good behavior in the press conference while they were in prison. Why does that really matter if they murdered their parents? Okay, so because they will, if they're eligible for parole, that is something that the parole board, or let's say the judge in this case, would look at. And that's what changes everything. There are many ways that you can handle yourself in prison. For example, the district attorney said that some people faced with the possibility of never being free again would choose a path, perhaps of darkness, of joining a gang in prison. and taking that path. And that's not the path that they took. So I would ask you, is rehabilitation central to our justice system and what you believe? And that's a component which is evaluated by parole boards and by judges. I don't know what you personally may think of that. I'm simply saying that it's a consideration that is taken by parole boards and judges, how the inmate acted, what the inmate did with his or her life. Were they a good citizen? Were they not? I mean, look at the Susan Smith case. She's up for parole and she's had all sorts of problems. This is the woman who's accused of killing her 2 babies by pushing a car into a body of water. So radically different approaches. Okay, more questions. Do you think this is happening? Why do you think this is happening now? Is it because of the documentary? The DA said it's happening because of the documentary. He said that there have been tons of documentaries, and I mean, come on, this is a case that's been reported on for 3 decades. So yeah, I think that the documentary is a big part of it, but I believe that the TikTok movement really is a big component of this. It's almost like there's been a snowball of comments and this energy and this discussion that has pushed it to this moment where a decision has to be made as to what happens with the Menendez brothers. I'm just going to check with our producers. Oh, more questions? Okay, good. I'll just stay here and answer your questions as best I can. Oh, before I get to that question, I want to make clear, we put up some photos on our social media at My True Crime News, and you can see the some members of the Menendez family sitting in the front row. I know that they were standing with the district attorney, but they're sitting in the front row also. One of the wives, Tammy Mendez, is also there. So it's just so interesting when you see what else is going on in the room, but she's not sitting with the rest of the family. I don't know what that means. It could mean nothing. I'm just simply, because this was a marriage that happened after they were imprisoned. Question, do you believe they've been rehabilitated? I think they've never had an issue with how they've conducted themselves. I don't believe there have been any disciplinary issues with them where they've been brought up on any kind of charges. From the reports from other inmates or prisoners or people who had been in a jail with them, their feelings have always been that they were pretty upstanding guys. These are 2 young men of privilege. I think the question that I've always had, and I don't know if any of you feel the same way, is I think there are a lot of Lyle and Erik Menendezes all over the country sitting in prisons. This one has gotten a tremendous amount of attention because of their celebrity, because of their wealth, because of their privilege. So what about everyone else? That is what I ask. What about everyone else who's in a similar situation? Okay, what other questions do we have? Oh, is that from you or from? No. Oh my God, well, whoever said this, I love you. You're amazing, Anna. Love you and love the live streams. Thank you. Okay, so I want to hear from you. As you know, I read your comments. If you follow me and you listen to the podcast, I'm always trying to respond to you in real time as best I can. I want to hear your comments. Do you think they should be released? Should they be released immediately? What do you think about the fact that there are going to be a lot of assistant district attorneys tomorrow in court to challenge this and try to convince the judge otherwise, to say absolutely not, they cannot be released? At the end of the day, 2 people were brutally murdered, their parents. And some of you have even asked, well, maybe you could understand how they felt about Erik, so why so much anger towards their mother, Kitty? I don't have the answer. I'm just simply saying that these are some of the conversations that I've had with you as we've been exchanging messages on social media. So I think we're gonna wrap it up now. We will have a lot more of this, obviously, on True Crime News, which you can catch every day. And then on True Crime News, the podcast, we're gonna talk about this as well. And any other updates that we have, don't forget tomorrow in court. So we still don't know the decision, so we're gonna be following that. So thanks everyone, bye.